Hello and welcome to this week's Talent Talks. My name is David Allison. These webinars and podcasts provide an insight into the changing world of work. They're a conversation with those responsible for recruiting into companies large and small, as well as apprentices and graduates to hear what it's really like. We're covering a wide range of occupations, industries and regions of the country to explore some of the many changes that are happening around us today, as well as the even bigger changes which are on the horizon. Not only the challenges brought about by the pandemic, but also the transformations of working patterns and the changing need for skills brought about by the huge growth in automation. So my guests today are Heena Chaudray and Aishah Secretary from Transport for London. So Transport for London is the integrated transport authority responsible for delivering the strategy and commitment set out by the London Mayor. And in practice, this means running the day-to-day operations of the transport network and main roads across London. And whilst many of us may think of the Underground or the iconic red buses when we talk about Transport for London, there are many other elements which make it up. So from overground trains, the cycling, the Emirates airline, to taxis and the piers used on the River Thames, as well as the London Transport Museum. And of course, it's even more diverse than that. Transport for London are one of the largest landowners in London, as well as managing commercial media and data across their networks. But before we explore more of those challenges, welcome to both Heena, who looks after the apprenticeship and graduate recruitment, and Aishah, an HR apprentice within Transport for London. So welcome to both. Before we talk more about Transport for London, I wonder if we could begin with a bit of background introduction. So Heena, I know you've actually worked for a number of different organisations, but what was it that attracted you to Transport for London, and particularly your role looking after graduate and apprenticeship recruitment?
So in terms of my experience, I've got quite an extensive background in recruitment, and before I joined Transport for London, I was looking after recruitment for the apprenticeship sector. So upon discovering, when I was looking for another role and looking at Transport for London, I think what attracted me the most was obviously the main thing being such a large organisation, working for London, and more importantly, looking into kind of the values, the vision, and looking more deeply into what can they offer and what I can give back. I just thought the role would be perfect. In terms of, bringing my recruitment, my apprenticeship experience into this role, I thought it would be a really good fit. And also the graduate market is something which has been new to me. So it's been really, really brilliant experience and a really great opportunity to join Transport for London and kind of, give my experience back as well as gain a lot more new skills.
That's a really interesting theme, and I'm sure we'll come back to it in terms of the values, because Transport for London's got a huge transformation, hasn't it, in terms of moving towards greener transport for the whole of the city.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Aishah, coming to you then very quickly. So you're an HR apprentice within Transport for London. What was it that attracted you to Transport for London?
Well, I've always had the vision within myself that I wanted to work at TfL, so that does say something there. I've grown up in London, and TfL has been a big part of my life, and it has been literally my form of transport since I was probably 11. And ever since then, I also had my brothers who definitely gave a great insight into what TfL could hold for me, as they had done some research into it from when they were my age as well. And so from when I finished my GCSEs, I was stuck on the idea that I wanted to get involved with Transport for London and apply for an apprenticeship here. And I did so, and I would never say that I will regret my decision, because it's been amazing since I started, and I know I'll always see the same.
Fantastic. Well, I'll come back to you in a minute, then we'll talk a bit more about that. But I guess, and so in normal times, I'm one of those users of Transport for London. I use it 3 or 4 times a week. And I take it for granted. I really do. I get on the tube, I expect it to work. But it wasn't until kind of doing a bit of reading before our conversation today that I really began to understand how big it is. I mean, it's huge and so diverse, isn't it?
It's a huge organisation. We have, roughly 27,000 employees who work for us. Also, we work with a number of other businesses. So it's a huge organisation, and there is so much in terms of, what TfL do. When people think of TfL, and it's similar to what you mentioned before, is they think of the red buses, train drivers, tube drivers. But when you actually divulge deeper into, what do TfL actually do, then you realize, there's a whole HR function, we've got finance teams, and then, looking more deeply into the kind of infrastructure, you've got construction teams, engineering. So there is a number of different, different parts of TfL, which all form or kind of work in a little sync to kind of bring Transport for London together, and for it to be working seamlessly together. There's a lot of people involved in that kind of background process, which people don't always think about or assume when thinking of Transport for London.
So is that one of your challenges, I suppose, in kind of getting across to young people just the huge diversity of roles that you need to keep that organisation going?
Yes, that is definitely one of the challenges. People, like I said, a lot of young people would automatically think about the tubes and train drivers and those kind of typical roles which you would expect for us to be recruiting. But then, we do have a large offering in terms of, for example, engineering, the built environment. We have a number of roles in those kind of areas, and people wouldn't automatically think, if I'm looking for a role within those kind of areas, I will come to TfL. But that is a challenge that we do face in terms of those roles, and really getting people to kind of apply for those roles, and teaching them that Transport for London is a lot more than those kind of typical roles which people think of.
So in a typical year then, what does recruitment look like for you? What sort of skills, because you do apprenticeships as well as graduates obviously, so it's a it's a broad spectrum.
So in terms of, so we recruit for a number of roles on the graduate and apprentice side. So we tend to have a yearly intake. Because of COVID, it was a bit different within the last year and a half. But typically what we would be doing throughout the year is recruiting for those kind of roles. So on the graduate side, we recruit for a number of different roles within some of the roles I've kind of mentioned already, but like engineering, for example, civil engineering, you'll have finance, you'll have roles like that. And similar on the apprenticeship side, we recruit all the way from level 3 to level 7. So roles could be like quantity surveying, finance, HR. Obviously, Aishah here is a brilliant example of of our HR apprentice, and we would be recruiting in all those kind of different areas.
So Aishah, then tell us a bit more about what it's really like as an HR apprentice. It sounds like you knew where you wanted to go, so I should imagine parents were supportive that this was the right career for you as well.
Yeah, you know what? When you finish sixth form, there's always people who ask you, "Oh, don't you want to go to university?" Like that's the typical way to go around it. But you know what? I would definitely seeing people who have gone down the university route and were in a position just like I was, where I wasn't too sure about anything that I wanted to then go and study for multiple years. They are now potentially not in the best position as they could be, and I feel like an apprenticeship really opens that up for you, because it gives you that side where you are allowed to study and you're given that opportunity to get a qualification by the end of it, and you also get to get that hands-on working experience, and then by the end of it you do get to see such a broad spectrum of an organisation. You then kind of see where you feel like you belong. And so in terms of me as a HR apprentice, I started quite recently, so I started in January. Well, time's flying, so it has gone quite fast so far. But I definitely say that what I've experienced so far has, especially the way my scheme has been organised, I had a great introduction in my first placement into what HR is and how much impact HR has on all the 27,000 employees that are at TfL. And because it's such a broad organisation, HR are definitely vital to it. So I definitely got to see that in my first placement, and now being with the Skills and Employment team, I have been really enjoying my time seeing the behind the scenes of the development of grads and apprentices. So that's been great too, because I now get to see the other side of where I once was.
Yeah, and I mean, apprentices are great, aren't they? Because you do get to practice what you preach, or you get to see the day-to-day reality as well as studying. So what was your first placement in then, Aishah?
So my first placement was in the business services function at TfL. So that fell under all the admin side of TfL, where we got to see, as my cohort of HR apprentices, we got to experience seeing and answering queries from all across the business. It could be from one email from a train operator, one email from another fellow HR colleague. So it could literally be from anywhere. And that was one of the sub-placements within that large placement. And it definitely gave a great insight into the employee life cycle here at TfL, because you get to see everything. You might get queries regarding the onboarding of a candidate, or you might get queries regarding death in service, as horrible as it is. And there's many things that team do deal with under the business services function, and I definitely got to see a lot of that. And it was a great introduction. I'm really glad that came as the first placement that we had here at TfL.
HR is a great function, isn't it? Because you do get such a fantastic insight into the overall business. Every single person is reliant on you at some point. So, I mean, Heena, it sounds like the rotation model then is really embedded in what you do. That must be a great way of helping young people identify what opportunities are out there, but also helping you to get that fit right as people are kind of progressing their careers.
Certainly, and I think that the beauty, it also helps with the kind of attraction piece as well, because although people, for example, if we use Aishah in this kind of situation, she has applied for a HR apprenticeship, she will be doing a number of placements. So that's how all our apprenticeship and our graduate roles work. They're built up of a number of placements. So although they are aligned to whatever role they're applying for, you are working with different parts of the business. So you get a real feel for, you know, for example, Aishah's with us now. She could go on to do something different within a different team, and it may be that some of the other kind of teams that she's with, maybe she may feel that there's certain aspects of those roles that she feels that actually this is what I want to kind of specialize in terms of HR. And for example, if someone's doing that on the engineering side, they could be working in a number of different teams, and again, it might be that there's one or two teams or types of roles that they've kind of done and really feel that actually, you know, I'm comfortable with this, I really want to kind of expand on this. So then they will decide later on that this is what they kind of want to go into specialize in. So I think it's a really good opportunity for people to gain those kind of skills. You get the opportunity to work with a vast number of people across the business and also different ways of working. So we may have in our particular team a certain way that we work, and it could be that the apprentice goes on, you know, to work with another team, and they'll have a completely different way of working as well. So it's a really great opportunity for candidates to kind of have that overall feel of what it's really like working for Transport for London.
It's a really interesting point, and I think, you know, it is so difficult, isn't it, for any young person to make a choice about a career when they actually haven't experienced it. Aishah, I know that having looked at your CV, you did quite a few work placements, didn't you, before you started work for Transport for London? How important to you? How important to you was it actually getting those different experiences, do you think, in making a good decision?
To be honest, I feel like having that experience of many different organisations gave me an insight into how many opportunities there are out there in the world. And it just goes to show there's a reason why. I had never done a work experience here at Transport for London, yet I still went and applied for an apprenticeship there, of all places. And so I feel like having experience definitely does give you the opportunity to see what it's like to work in the workplace. And from a young age, to have that instilled within you develops your skills insanely, I must say, because it really does put you in a position where your networking skills have already developed to an extent, and your ability to manage a project or deal with a project really gets you there from early on. And I think having that as a backbone would definitely be a great kickstart into then having a great career ahead of you.
So a recommendation for anybody else who's listening then to definitely get out there and do some work experience to help you no matter what it's in almost.
Yep, 100%. I would 1,000,000,000% vouch for work experiences. I think they are a great opportunity to give you great insight into what life holds ahead of like university and studying, etc.
Cool. Okay, thank you. So, Heena, I mean, across all those different disciplines, are there things that you look for in common amongst the applicants you get? What is it that makes a great applicant for TfL?
I think the biggest thing for us is motivation and that willingness to learn. So in terms of when candidates make those applications, we don't necessarily look at CVs in terms of how much experience people hold. For us, it's really, we want people to come into the organisation, have that real motivation that this is the kind of role that they want to learn. These are the kind of skills that they want to kind of, build upon. So for us, it's that motivation, it's that willingness to learn, coming in and really kind of, making your own journey and really, grasping all the opportunities that you will be given within any of these kind of, whether it's a graduate or apprenticeship position, to really kind of expand.
And typically, then, what do you think it is that young people are looking for when they sign up for Transport for London? Do they know what they're joining, what they're wanting to join, or is it kind of a voyage of discovery?
I think they're obviously informed beforehand in terms of, so we try and specify when we do the job application, specs, what they will be doing, the kind of typical placements. So for some people, we will, for some of the roles, obviously some people may not know what's kind of expected. So we will give an example of the types of placements that they could be expecting. And as well as if they're going to be doing an apprenticeship, we'll also align it to the apprenticeship standard that they will be working towards. So it gives them a kind of flavour if they want to go and do some research into, what that could look like, what will be involved in that kind of learning. So it will give them that understanding of what would be involved within, the apprenticeship with Transport for London.
And so for those who want to find out more about the different careers, where should they go? Where's a good place to go to find out about the details?
So it will be our website. On the TfL website, we have a dedicated careers page, and on there we have the roles that we have been recruiting for on the graduate and apprentice space, but also there is some further information on there which gives examples or further information in terms of typical questions that people may have. There's also guidance for parents and guardians, and also if people are kind of stuck on what should I do, then we kind of give them different options which are kind of open to them to have a look at. And although the roles on there at the moment, some of them we've just recently recruited, so they may not be live, we've kept the job specs there. So it gives people an example of, typically if this role is going to be coming up, then this is what would be kind of expected of them. And it also outlines the duration of the roles and also the eligibility criteria as well. So that can help candidates.
Great. So for people that do want to join Transport for London, what's the recruitment cycle? When do you normally advertise roles? And what is the process that you have to go through?
So at the moment, with COVID, it has been slightly different, but typically we would go live for our level 4 to 6 apprenticeship roles and our graduate roles around the autumn time. So you could be looking anything from, so for example, this year, it could be we're looking at typically between September till around December time for when we go live with those roles. And then the level 3 apprenticeship roles, we normally open later on. It's normally kind of early February around National Apprenticeship Week. That's what we kind of aim for. And all of these roles, although they go out slightly different in terms of the kind of the live date, they will all start typically in September, and that's how we would normally recruit, with the aim for them to all start in September. In terms of the actual recruitment process, candidates would go and have a look at the kind of job description, read through an in-depth job description and make an online application where they ask a number of questions around kind of more so disqualification questions to confirm the right to work in the UK and are they actually eligible for these particular positions. So more importantly, they would have some kind of eligibility criteria. For example, they may need to have 5 GCSEs, so it would ask questions like that. Would the candidate have those in time for when they start? And then what will happen is they're sent some online tests to complete, and then what will happen, as long as candidates meet the kind of the basic criteria for the role and they pass the online test, they are then invited to do a online interview. It's a video interview, it's pre-recorded, so that can sound quite daunting to people who've not done that before. But people are given a set time, so typically we would allow, for example, a week for candidates to do that. It's a number of questions, very basic, a couple of questions more around the motivational fit as to why they feel, that particular role is suitable for them, and also the reasons for wanting to join Transport for London. So they're then given a set kind of time to record their answers back, and then again, they would be marked. And then what will happen is we would hold assessment days for those kind of top candidates, should I say, who've kind of passed all of those stages to then come in for an assessment centre, which before COVID would have been done face to face, but at the moment we're doing it virtually. And it typically is a day where, depending on what role they've applied for, it could be they could be doing a competency-based interview or a scenario-based interview. And if they're doing a graduate application, then they would also be asked to do a presentation, and that would be based on whatever role they've applied for. They get given a week ahead, they would be given a topic to basically prepare a presentation on. So that's typically what the kind of and what would be involved. And also what we do have on the assessment day is a great opportunity to meet current grads or apprentices. So they do a Q&A with them, and it's not assessed, and it's really a great opportunity for those candidates to find out more information and really find out, what it's like to be, a grad or an apprentice at TfL, and if they have certain questions that they want to ask more about, maybe, how does it work in terms of working and studying at the same time, then they'll be able to have the opportunity to ask those kind of questions. And then
that sounds like one heck of a process. I mean, Aishah, how was it from your side? I mean, did you like? You enjoy it? Did you enjoy it, or was it a struggle?
So I was fortunate enough to have my assessment centre in person.
Okay.
But overall, you know what, I'd say it does seem like a very long process in terms of the stages that there are. But it literally, in terms of the application, the online little situational strengths test, and the video interview, those three things, they kind of just fly by. After you've done them, you kind of get them out of the way and you kind of forget about them. But then the assessment centre, you prep for, and if you're ready and you have passion for the role, you will definitely smash it. And I always say that when I'm speaking to someone who's applying, I just say, if you be yourself and you have passion for what you want, then you'll get it.
That's a really interesting thing. It's the one recurring thing of all these conversations is that employers are really looking for people who want to work there rather than just kind of ticking a box, aren't they? That passion for the role you just talked about, is that something you see a lot then in the applicants you get?
Yeah, sorry, in terms of the application, sorry, did you say, David?
Yeah, how do young people demonstrate their passion for TfL, do you think, in the way in which they talk to you in terms of that process?
So I think the most important thing is people, and you can really see it when people have done their research, when it comes through in those kind of questions and answers. But really, it's thinking long term. It's thinking about how does this particular role, or how does TfL as an employer really support them in terms of the long term goals. And it's really for them to kind of demonstrate that motivation, that passion. What have they done? How much of that job spec do they know? How can they align that in terms of what they want to do? So when it comes to them in terms of coming through, or the kind of standout candidates in that process, you can really see it. So it's people who've really gone and thought about, how do TfL as an employer really fit their values, fit what they want to do in terms of long-term plans, and again, in terms of the role, how is that role helping them in terms of their development? And it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who comes through the process in terms of grads and apprentices want to stay, with TfL for the next 30 years, but it's for them to come in and gain those relevant skills and those qualifications. The beauty of these roles as well is we do offer industry recognised qualifications, so they'll have that opportunity, depending on whatever role they're doing, to gain those qualifications. So again, it could be that people come in and they want to gain those qualifications, and maybe long term it could be that they go on and take those skills somewhere else. But really, it's kind of demonstrating that within their kind of answers, and getting that passion across as to why they want to join us, and more importantly, do that particular role.
Brilliant. Okay, so on a practical point of view, I guess you have to kind of work in London if you're going to be by the Transport for London team. Is that a fair assumption, even in these days of remote working?
Funnily you say that. It's a mix, actually, depending on, again, the type of roles you'll be doing. So in terms of, for example, my team, we've been lucky enough that we have been working from home, and we have been able to do whatever we would do in a face-to-face setting, we've been able to do it virtually. So it would depend on every team, and I think at the moment where we kind of sit with the uncertainty as to what's going to be happening, what does the next kind of 12 months look like, or long term, I guess every team and every role will be different. Some people will think you have the assumptions that, for example, if you're applying for an engineering role, whether it's on apprenticeship or graduate side, that they're going to be always office based and working on site. That's not always the case. So I think it really depends on the kind of teams that you'll be working with, but it will probably be that some will offer like hybrid working. So some of it will be working from home, some will be going into the offices. But yeah, at that moment, I think in terms of what it looks like long term, it remains to be seen.
Aishah, one of the things that I think a lot of people say around apprentices, you don't get the same as the university experience. And I think for many apprentices, this year has been kind of doubly difficult because you haven't even had people on site. But what is your experience? Do you feel as if you've missed out, as it were, by not going through that university experience?
Not at all. I would never say that I feel like I've missed out. I am working towards a level 5 CIPD qualification.
And for those that don't know in HR, CIPD is?
It's the Chartered Institute of something. But it's a HR qualification that many organisations do look for, and if you have that, then you are basically like ahead of a lot of people that would apply for the same role as you. It's a great qualification to have. A level 5 is quite a high qualification, with level 6 being a degree apprenticeship. So in terms of my qualification, it is with Kingston College, and I receive 1 day a week. My Wednesdays are dedicated to college. I do not think about work, and I cannot think about work. If I do, I get told off. It is dedicated for me to study, to attend my lectures, and to work towards that qualification as best as I can, to complete my assignments and meet them on time. And so having a balance of both work and college is really important for me, and just having that understanding within myself that I'm able to complete everything that I need to alongside each other and working it hand in hand is really good. And it's really easy to see how what I learn in college then reflects into my working life as well, because I learn many things through my qualification that I can then use within college as well. So I definitely say that's cool.
And so, I mean, the CIPD qualification is the gold standard, isn't it, in the world of HR? So to be able to gain that along the way. How about the other side, the social side? I mean, is there a cohort or a group of apprentices who you can get together with within TfL?
Yes, I would definitely say that I know people do go to uni looking for the social side of it and excited about that, and they think that because you're doing an apprenticeship, I'm not going to get that side of it. I have met amazing people, even though I've been virtually all this time. I have met apprentices and grads from other schemes, and we have organised these things called coffee roulettes, where we get to spend some time together with someone from a completely different scheme and just speak to them about how they've been finding it, who they are, what they do, and how they got to where they are. And they could be like today. I literally had a coffee roulette just a bit before this session, and that was with a general management apprentice who's been on the scheme for 4 years, and I literally just met her for the first time, and we just spoke for half an hour, had a nice chat, and got to know each other a little bit. So you definitely get to meet people who are on the same path as you, who are working towards something just as where you are, and are studying with you as well. And TfL would definitely give great opportunities to get to know other people within the organisation. And there's also the Graduate and Apprentice Committee, who literally are made up of graduates and apprentices, who are dedicated to making sure that we're okay and we feel connected as a whole cohort.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you both very much indeed for giving up your time and talking today. And we'll put links on the Get My First Job website to those various resources we've talked about. Heena, Aishah, thank you so much. It's been a really great conversation and fascinating to hear so much about the world of transport for London. And finally, thank you to you for joining the Talent Talk. I look forward to catching up with you next time when we're going to be exploring another area of public service, that of the police. So see you then.